Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/audio.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstream gang, or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I'm Jim Chapman, and today I'm bringing you another story of someone incarcerated in America's bloodiest prison and a female accomplice incarcerated elsewhere as we cover the crimes, conviction, and incarceration of Eric Mickelson and Beverly Arthur. Now, before we get into this, just quickly, this is the first episode I have recorded on Bloody Angola since the horrific terrorist attack in New Orleans that left 15 people dead, including the piece of shit responsible, and many more injured. I'm sure that most of you have heard the details, so I won't get into that here. This event happened about an hour from where I record here in South Louisiana, and obviously my heart and prayers go out to the victims of this tragedy in my home state of Louisiana. It goes without saying there's no honor in what this fuckstick did. He's a coward, and he died a coward, and that is that. So we're going to get into today's episode, and I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about Charles Martin Jr. Now, Charles Martin Jr. was born on May 14th, 1921 in Colorado. He was from a large family, actually one of 11 children. And of course, during this time in history, the 20s, large families were very common. And when Charles was 5 years old, his family picked up and they moved to Shreveport, Louisiana, which Shreveport is in the northern part of Louisiana, about 4.5 to 5 hours from where I record. And it borders Texas to the west and Arkansas to the north. Now, when he was a little boy, Charles was a musical talent. He loved to play the harmonica. He would go to like nursing homes and he would cheer up the older folks by playing. And he actually got so good at it, he started composing his own songs. But it spoke to who he was as a person, even at a very young age, that he would go to those nursing homes and want to put a smile on the face of these older people just by entertaining them and playing the harmonica. But he was very mechanically inclined as well. He loved to work with his hands. He even designed and built his own home security system, as well as many other electronic devices at a time in history where electronics were really being discovered for the first time. Now, Charles' grandsons, Martin and Chris, would later say, "We took apart old copy machines to get the parts to make that alarm system. So he would repurpose other electronic items. Just an amazing guy with his hands. He also loved to fish, and when he had his own children later on in life, he would take them fishing on Caddo Lake any chance that he got. But throughout his life, it was the military and serving his country where Charles really found his calling. He enlisted in the Army during World War II, and he was a true blue war hero, y'all. He served as a radio operator. He took classified calls as a member of the B Company 62nd Signal Battalion. And it was during World War II, while on a mission off of the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean, that he was wounded when a German U-boat attacked the ship he was on. By the time he left military service, he was a very highly decorated military individual, having received the Purple Heart, the Military Merit Award, the Good Conduct Award, and numerous other awards. So he gets discharged from the Army, and then Charles works as an aircraft mechanic at Barksdale Air Force Base. He then went on to work for Brock's Auto as a mechanic, and eventually Charles and his brother, they opened up a specialty paint coatings company called Martin's Specialty Coatings, where he would work as a house painting contractor until he retired in 1985. Now, service was important for Charles, and throughout his life, he not only dedicated himself to it, but he was also recognized often for it. He spent his time educating people on the laws, the Constitution, and he had some pretty conservative Christian beliefs. He spoke all over the country. He campaigned and ran for many offices, and he drew up a lot of petitions to support the causes that he compassionately believed in. He was the founder and president of the National Petitioning Committee for Constitutional Government, and he even received the Young Americans for Freedom Award for that committee. And interestingly enough, in 1960, Charles obtained an estimated 12 million signatures to impeach U.S. Chief Justice Earl Warren, who sought to repeal the 14th Amendment and oppose the Federal Reserve System. Now, in addition to all that, he was also a lifetime member of the VFW Post 2238, and he was awarded the State of Louisiana's Honorary Attorney General Award by the State of Louisiana Department of Justice in 1956 and then again in 1960. This guy was a stud. He was even honored for outstanding patriotism to God and country on May 28th, 1960. He was given the key to the city of New Orleans and awarded honorary citizen of New Orleans by the mayor in 1967. And he was even awarded the honorary Secretary of State Award in 1985 under Jim Brown. Now, even with all that, he was also a family man. He had been married to his wife, Mary, for 56 years. And he had 3 children, 9 grandchildren, 18 great-grandchildren, and 3 great-great-grandchildren. And even at 86 years old, when his amazing life came to a tragic end, he was a go-getter. He would get up early and he would work on things around the house at 86 years old. And he would do that until nighttime. And his grandson would say, even at 86, he could still whip my ass if he wanted to. It's how he earned his nickname, Peaceful Warrior, a true family man and a warrior, just an amazing human being. So on July 11th of 2007, a then 86-year-old Charles Martin, he gets reported missing by his daughter. She had tried to call him several times. She could not reach him, which was way beyond the pale for Charles. So she goes to his home and she finds no sign of Charles or his vehicle. Now, one thing his daughter noticed when she and other family members went inside the home was how clean it was. It wasn't that he did not keep a tidy home, but this was like museum quality clean, not just tidy. Another strange thing they noticed was that the motion detectors that were positioned throughout the home were turned off. Of course, at 86 years old, hearing is something you lose as you age, and Charles was hard of hearing, and those motion detectors were what he used to alert him when somebody was approaching the home or entering the home. They also found a wad of hair under a seat cushion, and the bedroom door was broken. So police get called to the scene, and they interview his daughter, and they ask her if she had any idea who may have wanted to hurt Charles. It's not like Charles had a bunch of enemies. He was really beloved by everyone, as you can tell, who knew him, but there was one person that his daughter thought may have something to do with his disappearance. His daughter mentioned to police that Charles had been spending time with someone by the name of Beverly Arthur. She said Beverly had stolen prescriptions from Charles in the past, and the daughter suspected a rug and a wooden barrel full of rare and foreign coins that had went missing in the past from Charles' home to have been stolen by Beverly. So police, armed with this information, they find a copy of Charles' bank statement at his home, and they discover some suspicious bank transactions. So they go directly to the bank and they speak with the staff. And sure enough, not only did they find out that Beverly Arthur had recently tried to cash a check from Charles Martin's account, but they also get a copy of the surveillance video showing her attempting to cash that check, as well as her address. Because when she attempted to cash said check, she provided her driver's license, which the bank happened to make a copy of. They were also told by bank personnel that another individual they identified as Michael Jones had attempted to cash a check from Charles' account. So on Thursday, July 12th of 2024, armed with Beverly Arthur's address, a corporal for the Shreveport PD, as well as his partner, they head over to Beverly Arthur's home. And their idea there was, we're going to surveil it and see if they spot Charles Martin coming or going from the house or anything that may lead to his disappearance without necessarily alerting Beverly Arthur that they're doing so. So they turn down the street, they arrive at the home, and right away, they have a key piece of evidence. Right there in the driveway is Charles Martin's Chrysler 300M vehicle, which a white male is standing right beside it, who police would identify later as Eric Mickelson, but at the time they thought was Michael Jones, the other guy that tried to cash that check. So there's no need to surveil now, right? You got the car right there in the driveway. Police pull into the driveway, and as soon as they pull in, Eric Mickelson, who they described as appearing very nervous, he starts reaching for his waistband. And of course, the officers, they freak out. They fear that he's reaching for his gun. So one of the detectives, he pulls his weapon and he orders Mickelson onto the ground where he is searched and he is handcuffed. Meanwhile, one of the other detectives, he makes his way to the front door of the house and he spots Beverly Arthur and her mother exiting that house. So the scene gets secure and everyone is taken into custody for questioning. And the police do determine that Michael Johnson is actually Eric Mickelson. But Eric Mickelson was definitely the guy that tried to cash that check. So who is Eric Mickelson? Well, Eric was not what you would consider a model citizen. Between 1995 and 2006, he had been booked into jail 5 times from charges ranging from vandalizing Coke machines to drug possession to felony theft to simple burglary. He had a son, though they were estranged and they didn't speak until his son was 18 years old. And he also had a brother. His Shreveport neighbors would describe him as very strange, saying he would spend hours just sitting outside his house and talking on the phone and pacing back and forth. Just a weird guy. And what about Beverly Arthur? Well, in all honesty, she had her shit together a little more than Mickelson did in some ways. She was a graduate of LSU Shreveport. She had a bachelor's degree in accounting, and she had been married. But in 2004, her husband, Michael, committed suicide by shooting himself in the head with a .22 caliber handgun. And get ready for this, that handgun was registered to Charles Martin. Charles Martin had actually reported the gun stolen 3 days before the suicide. And Beverly Arthur, who was known by our friends as Susie, also had a 5-year-old son. Now, in the onset, it might seem that Beverly might have been a pretty good citizen, with the degree and all that. This couldn't be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, her rap sheet was actually twice as long as Mickelson's. Between 1995 and 2007, Beverly had been arrested and booked into the Caddo Parish Correctional Center 10 times for everything from unauthorized use of a motor vehicle to forgery to theft to drug possession. She and Mickelson had been lifelong friends, and Beverly Arthur's mother, Betty, would later describe Mickelson as weird and demanding, and described her daughter as having a dark side that was often triggered when she was under the influence of drugs. So police on the scene, they asked Mickelson whose car that 300M was, and Mickelson confirms that it was the still missing Charles Martin's vehicle. And Mickelson tells the detective on the scene that he and Beverly Arthur dropped Charles off at a bus stop in downtown Shreveport. And the detectives, knowing this sounded like bullshit, they radio for backup, and then they get the keys from Beverly Arthur and they conduct a search of the vehicle, which doesn't really turn up anything that would raise an eyebrow. No signs of a struggle on the inside of the vehicle, no blood droplets anywhere. Nothing that they saw that would raise any sort of suspicion. The detectives then asked to search Mickelson for a second time. And when doing this, what do you think they find? Well, they find Charles Martin's wallet and his ID in the pocket of Mickelson. They then confer with Arthur's mother, who granted permission to search the residence. And during the search, the officers found some of the coins that had been taken from Charles's home and a portion of a check with Charles's signature on it. So with this discovery, the detectives know they have enough to haul both Mickelson and Arthur to the station for further questioning. And they ensure that both are transported in separate police cruisers. And the reason they do this, y'all, is they don't want them communicating with each other and getting their story straight, right? If they're in the same cruiser and they're headed to the station at the same time, they can come up with a whole story. So they make sure they're separated. So at the station, initially, Mickelson, he denies everything. And he sticks to his story that they dropped Charles Martin off at that bus stop. However, police continued to question and eventually broke Mickelson down, and he admits that he had helped Beverly Arthur break into Charles Martin's home. He said that he helped open a window in the rear of the home and that Beverly Arthur climbed in, went to the front of the home, and let Mickelson in. So once inside, Beverly knocked on the bedroom door in an attempt to wake up Charles Martin, whose bedroom door was locked. But, as I told you, Charles was hard of hearing, and he didn't wake up, even with Beverly banging on that door. So Mickelson and Beverly, they kick it in. Mickelson said Charles woke up and, quote, wasn't real happy. Mickelson said he then, quote, grabbed 86-year-old Charles Martin by the neck and strangled him until he stopped moving. He then placed Charles Martin's body in the bathroom while Beverly Arthur went around the house stealing shit. He then said he and Beverly dressed Charles Martin, put his body in the back seat of the car, and drove the car to purchase drugs. Literally with the body in the back seat, sitting up as if Charles Martin was alive. So police start asking Mickelson why. And his claim was he did it all for Beverly, that it was what she wanted him to do. He claimed that she manipulated him to, quote, wring his neck. Now, Beverly Arthur, in her own interview with police, more or less confirmed everything Mickelson had told police and claimed that Mickelson dismembered the body and disposed of it in more than one location. But she was unable to lead police to where that correct location was. So police, they questioned Mickelson again, and he said they killed Charles to keep him from going to police regarding money that he was giving to Beverly Arthur, and that they needed money to purchase cocaine, and they kind of freaked out and killed him. Police say, well, will you lead us to where he's buried? And he agrees to do that, and he leads police to the dismembered remains of Charles Martin, referring to it as his treasure hunt, jokingly. And the remains of this 86-year-old war hero, known as the Peaceful Warrior, were found in 4 different spots. The police found Charles Martin's torso wrapped in a trash bag and dumped in a wooded area in Shreveport. His legs were found at a dumpster at an amusement park in Shreveport. His head and arms were found inside a dumpster at a mobile home park in neighboring Keithville, Louisiana. So at the end of this day, obviously, Mickelson and Beverly Arthur are arrested, and they're charged with the first-degree murder of Charles Martin, with both receiving a $1.5 million bail. But Mickelson, he isn't done talking. And the next day, on Friday, July 13th of 2007, he makes another confession regarding a missing persons case from 11 years prior. So let me tell you about Kristi O'Pry. Kristi O'Pry was born on May 8th, 1970 in Minden, Louisiana, which is also in North Louisiana. She had 3 sisters and 1 brother who tragically died the day he was born. And Kristi had a tough go of it, to say the least, early in life. When she was just 7 years old, she was sexually abused by a neighbor. One of her sisters would later say that even at such a young age, she felt like that crushed her spirit. By the time Kristi was a teenager, she would become a ward of the state. Now, once she crossed over into adulthood, it would not get much easier for Kristi. To describe her, she was a really beautiful girl, 5'7", 115-pound head turner. And although she worked at a gentleman's club at one time in the Shreveport area called the Centerfold Lounge, she was able to maintain a long-term relationship of 6 years with a guy by the name of Todd Dean, who she had a child with. Her friends described her as a gentle soul who never met a stranger and a free spirit who laughed, loved, and enjoyed life. Now, at the time that Mickelson was sitting in that Shreveport police station, Kristi had been missing for some 11 years. It was on July 19th of 1996 that Kristi, she needed to run some errands in Shreveport, Louisiana. Eric Mickelson, who was a friend of Kristi's boyfriend, Todd Dean, he agreed to drive her if she paid for the gas used. Now, there's a long story behind that. Her and Todd Dean had gotten in an argument because he didn't want to have to bring her to run these errands, and he left the house. She kind of lived out in the country, and so she couldn't just walk to go run those errands, and that's why she called Eric Mickelson. So Mickelson and Kristi, they hop in his 1971 Chevy pickup, and off they went. They also went by Kristi's sister's house. That was at around 8 o'clock that evening. And her sister said they made small talk and she acted fine. Her sister also mentioned that Mickelson had stopped by a liquor store and bought some whiskey, and he kind of sat on the bed of his truck while they talked and just drank his whiskey. Eventually they left, and according to Mickelson, his story is they went by a convenience store so she could use the payphone. This is in 1996, y'all. Cell phones were around, but they weren't the cell phones of today. You had to zip them up to use them and all that sort of thing. Police did later attempt to confirm and verify that they went by that convenience store, but they were unable to do so. According to Mickelson, he said he then dropped Kristi off at the Shreveport Mall. This was at approximately 8:30 p.m. that evening. And Kristi O'Pry was never seen again. Kristi was reported missing 4 days later, and it was revealed that Kristi was actually pregnant at the time of her disappearance. So police noticed a lot of things when they started investigating this that didn't add up. First, when they searched the home that she shared with her boyfriend, none of her stuff was missing, not even her makeup, which according to family and friends, there's no way she's going anywhere without her makeup for any length of time. In addition, she had a child, and everyone who knew Kristi knew how dedicated she was to her daughter. There was just simply no way in their mind she would up and leave her daughter. Police, in their investigation, also spoke with the South Park Mall security guard, who were at the mall entrance actually on horseback, and they stated they did not recall anyone fitting Kristi's description being dropped off between 8 and 9 o'clock p.m. on the night that Kristi vanished. So a lot of things aren't adding up. Now, her and her boyfriend, they had on and off again relationship for 6 years. They fought a lot. She left the house a lot, in the middle of the night and went and stayed with friends because they were getting in arguments. It was a rocky relationship. So if you're the police or you're investigating this, you're going to want to talk to Todd Dean, right? And they did. And he actually took a polygraph and he passed that polygraph with flying colors. So although that didn't completely remove him as a suspect, it definitely took the focus off of him. So obviously the last person to see her, I don't want to say alive, but the last person to see her, period, was Eric Mickelson, and he's going to become the prime suspect, as you would think. Now, this particular case became very high profile throughout the state of Louisiana. As a matter of fact, a private investigator and retired Shreveport police officer by the name of Ken Hudson, he was a private investigator that was very well thought of in that community. He offered his services free of charge. And he advised the family to obtain Kristi's dental records so they could be added to NCIC. Ken also set up a hotline and was working with a detective named Charles Scholes of the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office. And he was quoted as saying, "My main objective is to find Kristi, not to conduct an investigation and not to find who may have kidnapped her." A few days later, another private investigator by the name of William Bill Meeks, he joined in and offered to donate his services to assist in the search for Kristi. So time passes, and in September of 1996, Mickelson, he gets approached about taking a polygraph, and he flat out refuses. He claims that he does not believe in the accuracy of polygraphs. Kristi's mother, she visits Mickelson at some point during all this, and she presses him on if he knows where Kristi is, and he again denies knowing anything past dropping her off at the mall. Now, strangely, around this time, someone starts destroying all the missing poster signs around Shreveport, Louisiana of Kristi's disappearance. They were hung everywhere. This is big, high-profile shit going on right now. And somebody was going around and just pulling them off and throwing them away or tearing them up and throwing them in dumpsters every time one would be put up. And that was very odd and strange. Now, in October of 1996, there was actually a change in the detective that was investigating the case. According to the O'Pry family, the original detective just did not seem to be real concerned about finding Kristi at all in their mind. A new detective took over the case, and he kind of had what seemed to be a desperation in finding out who did this, and that was a good thing. Then in March of 1997, this case went national when the Geraldo Rivera show actually featured the O'Pry missing persons case. So this whole time, The main suspect is, of course, the last person to see Kristi, Eric Mickelson. And in December of 1997, police search dogs from South Louisiana, they comb a 180-acre tract of land in South Caddo Parish. Now, the dogs were specially trained German Shepherds, Black Labrador Retrievers, and what's known as curly-coated retrievers from Acadian Canine Search and Rescue in Gonzales, Louisiana, which is not too far from me, and Louisiana Search and Rescue Dogs of Slidell. And the land was actually owned by the family of Eric Mickelson, and police were directed to search the property after an anonymous tip came into a hotline. The Caddo Parish Sheriff's spokesman, a guy by the name of Greg Trusty, he said, "We'll be getting an early start, but we don't want to disclose the site because we don't want to attract any attention. The more people around, the harder it is for the dogs to work." The 5 trained police dogs and their handlers, they searched for more than 8 hours for a suspected shallow grave. The dogs did not find anything in the dense woods, hills, or the pasture searched. And the detective said, "I feel like her body is out there on the property, but we just are unable to find it." After the search day ended, the spokesman said it does not look promising. Now, eventually, the case runs completely cold, and there were no fresh leads until July 13th of 2007, when Mickelson was sitting in that confession room with detectives over the Charles Martin murder, and he confesses to the murder of Kristi O'Pry. Mickelson admitted to cutting off Kristi's limbs and throwing them in dumpsters around Caddo Parish, and he also said he sexually defiled her body. Caddo Parish Sheriff Steve Proctor said the O'Pry case has haunted us. It has haunted her family for years. The investigators worked hundreds of hours on it, but they were never able to find physical evidence that linked Mickelson to the case, and he refused the polygraph. We are relieved. It's a good thing to get it closed, but it's a bad thing that it happened. He went on to say, "Our people were on it just as soon as we heard he was suspected of killing Martin. His name immediately raised a flag. They are very familiar with it." The Caddo Parish Sheriff's Department began excavating the area where Eric claimed to have abandoned Kristi's remains. Detectives searched a creek and boggy area on Jefferson Page Road near the American Rose Center for evidence. Deputies dug with shovels and sent trained cadaver dogs to search the area. Parish workers later joined in the search, and they used a track hoe to dig out chunks of concrete and mud and put them in a dump truck. That sludge would be sifted through at another location. And her sister said, "We really tried to find Kristi's remains because we knew if Mickelson killed her, he would do it again. I'm very sad Mr. Martin had to die. If they could have gotten Mickelson back then this poor man would still be here today." And next week, we're going to pick up with the continued search for Kristi O'Pry's remains, the conclusion to this entire story, which you're not going to believe what we have coming up in this trial and this conviction, and then an overturn. So much still to tell you on this one. Thank you so much for listening. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com, Bloody Angola Podcast. I'm going to be uploading all kinds of extra files and pictures on this case, so look for that. And until next time, I'm Jim Chapman for Bloody Angola Podcast, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. Peace.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang, Wrangler.